도be sherapchiko gore odi ko bachiche songje dene zadang jogi dai tunga temba ngweshi samdai tanyu kabla dai tunga dileya ke sambache de ne kewe tunga da kawe tu nangi nawe tunga songde da kewe kabla tunga kana ka de yumbure lamna dileya jigmira wa ngaru bachi songje ne da kewe tunga da 네 인제와들이 내가래데 템비동아딘데 요래 세상한테 저게 디바도 칭한 주사래.
Good afternoon. So this morning we concluded to look at how to meditate, meditate in general, in particular context of meditate on true sufferings, which in brief is one needs to cultivate a mind that is concentrated and a similitude of shamatha, and a mind that is using analysis, and a mind of intelligence, a similitude of the mind of meditative insight. And to do so, one overcomes obstacles such as distraction arising from excitement or agitation, as well as lethargy and laxity. And again, it was emphasized this morning, the need to meditate with intelligence, analyzing, using reasonings. Then we came and started to look at the first meditation topic, true sufferings. So coming to look at suffering. And before the sixfold presentation, which will come, is an eightfold presentation. And we started looking at the first of these, the suffering of birth. And the suffering of birth has 5 points. And we looked at the first two. The birth is suffering because it is extremely painful. And secondly, birth is associated with dysfunctional habitual tendencies.
And the assembly kanga to Sushungo research. And the Masse and Kietsawine, Dang Jigge, Yomo Bakia, Yomo Gundu Nea, Yomo Konia Kondo Peggy, 17 Antolia, Yediba Inza, and Digi Genjine, Mandulia, Duvavina, Kanga Tea, and Jigge. Some notes didn't give you some stuff in there, some Tata Tamatuba Kanga chaired in the Ungores, and Ludilea and the Rameba and the Juvotor, so said Devanashin Chuaya Mares, Teza, the Niki Kor Ludi, and the Viking waiting by Chartrata, and the Deniki Jigge Uniwood Deus and Dea want to give to Matuadi, Gudredi, and the Lia. Give you Pumbo the land and Pumbo the la, the Negida, Gangata, no, it's got a Gendo, Shimasona, then the Shuavades, and that does in the Shimjuchine, the ordinary Redoa, some beginnings, how Goedi, and how Goedi did it, how could they some done, how Goedi, how Gonet, Tamal and Eva at near the Odadi, and then the Redo, some Pigeta, same never near the Gundi, Tongor, Vada.
In this presentation on the suffering of birth, it's referring specifically to births in cyclic existence, which means births taken under the control of contaminated karma and afflictions. And of the births taken under the control of contaminated karma and afflictions, not all of them experience visceral sensations of pain, but certainly the vast majority do. Then in the second point we looked at how birth is associated with negative habitual tendencies, or these dysfunctional habitual tendencies. This is a key point in the meditation, that merely or just through being born once again in cyclic existence, we have reading from the text, the seeds that produce, sustain, and increase the mental afflictions. That is merely a function of being reborn in cyclic existence. Why? Because our rebirth was propelled by contaminated karma and afflictions, therefore our samsaric body and mind, which are true sufferings, are naturally inclined to suffering. And we looked on to see, because of having the negative habitual tendencies, our birth is unsuited to be bound to the service of virtue. It is difficult to accrue virtue. Why? We do not have control over our body and mind. We think we have free will, but we do not. We cannot stop aging. We cannot will our sickness to end. Rather, we are under the control, not of our own free will, but our contaminated karma and afflictions. It's those that determine whether we suffering or not. It's those that determine whether we are ill or not. It is not something that we have control over, choice over. So therefore, it is difficult for us to engage in virtue. Obstacles naturally befall us. So these are the great impediments that come with rebirth and cyclic existence, accompanied by negative habitual tendencies.
Anda denegi du senan zugi phungbogi ngara zugi kewa le da nyomo kewa lemba telya kanga deni yungo ba de du sena ha koyo de da ane donda nyingbo de karasene di ha go de karasene ha go ba na karasone o da di yabu minwa dele de ta go de sembege tarde ge samba ye di donda la di ha go di ha mo na zugi di delya tar go de sembes tarde ge samba ki tu go mara dele ta go de sembe tarde samba ge de da dene ko ani lu ani chike gyön hamjedan dawa lulan kanga gyune chaya me duken ane chike lu gewi jawa nyamne garchebe ine ya ane garchebe na che tuya yue digen ane lular rangwa yoba ane odene gi lu di tobo gorba dangzo di tobe di yore yo marasin tobe yoba re chisa dine za nyomo ba sabana cheba pangpige da pangpa nyangdi se gokden se di tarba se toyo di ane dine gi lu di top gorba da dine zada dine lu di topne dingi dewa ki dine dewa ne dewa ma kanga gyune chaya me ba de chisa nga di lu di go gorba chisa di lu di tobe ge donyine ge donda la ye la ane dajenga zu phungbu lu de ya kanga dine stoa dine doa se ane kanga le de yoba ne di ane meba sue ne dile yaga toye yore besen yore se ne chala ma sona damga je roda damga je dikyun chala dile kyun didi yore se chala dile kyun yo dima kyun den yore she da yang zo samno garli gresen o dikyun yo didi chala den moho an di chala puida bu kyun me ne gugin se bege donye jigirwa di donye kyun de chala de rai to dala na je tablam je ne gaso chala ratu ba jigirwa di nanxin danga zu phungbo le ge yo de le da nyu mo wa ge yo de kho le ge yo de kanga ge ba ne kanga den yore se che da de le tar de samba ge de le tar be ge da tar be dunga kanga tamje nan je de ge phungbo ya bo di ne ra ye ge don da la ne donye ge samba ge de ne ge samba ge wa yo de ne di donye samba ge de tar ba donye samba ge wa se che ge wa je sa de tar ba donye samba ge de di tar be don da le ya lam nyam ne che be je che di taman devolma di devo to용ura toyode네 강한 탐질에 세 차와래 진짜 디기 땡기 되어 디기 되네 기디나 디기 땡기 되어 톱사래 당한도 거야데 디러와 진짜 디토비가 돈달라 당주게 당보 먼저 풍보들이야 먼저 개월련 받을 콜비 개월련 받을 강하데네 근데 요래서디 다 제시 작업도 김새로지 디러다
So we just started with having looked at only 2 of the 5 points of the first of the 8 sufferings. So right here at the outset, I want to emphasize again why we are meditating on true sufferings. Because it's imperative one understands the purpose. Otherwise, it feels like I'm being asked to send my mind in a negative direction, to think about unpleasant things, which is not anything that one wants to do. But if one understands the purpose clearly, then one will want to engage in these meditations. So the purpose of meditating on true sufferings, in this case the suffering of birth, is to come to actually recognize the situation we're in, to lift our veil of confused ignorance about our actual situation, and see with clarity what it means to be born in cyclic existence. Because to the extent we recognize this perilous situation we're in, we will develop a wish for something better. We'll have a wish for something free of this. When we see, for example, the faults of this body, and we see it clearly, I want a better body. I want a body that is suitable for engaging in virtue. I don't want to have all these aches and pains and all this discomfort that prevents me from applying myself to the extent I'd like to. Because we know, even when the wish arises, I want to apply myself to the Dharma, I want to cultivate what's meaningful. Physically, as well as mentally, there are many obstacles that keep coming our way. So by looking at the faults clearly, a wish for something better than this comes, a wish for freedom, a wish for liberation from this situation of being bound within aggregates, within a body and mind that are naturally subject to suffering, that are true sufferings. When we come to clearly see how we are bound, or that we are bound and how we are bound, we'll give rise to wish for something better. And seeing that there is a state where suffering ceases, and that is a state I can achieve. It's not beyond me. It's not just for the great and good. I can create those causes. Then we will yearn to attain a state of true cessation. This then gives us the determined attitude to emerge from these suffering realms of samsara, to break through these chains, to emerge from this prison and gain freedom from suffering. It is really very similar to the process we engage in when we recognize in our life that we have some difficulty and we seek out a solution. So we look for a product that can solve our problem. And in our investigation, when we find something that is unsuitable, we will keep looking. And then when we find something ideal, we'll set our heart on that and we will strive to attain it. Because we know it's ideal, it will solve our problem. This is what we are looking to do here. By reflecting on suffering in detail, we come to develop our intelligence, lift the veil of ignorance, of confused ignorance about our actual situation, and realize what we have, but what is possible. And that gives us a strength of mind to strive for lasting happiness. Continuing the text at the very top of page 159, with the third of the 5 points of the suffering of birth. And I'm just changing one word. Birth is the source of suffering. The suffering of aging, illness, death, and so forth develop from taking birth in the three realms.
감숨의 깨달음바 될라 때네 다 감숨의 깨달음바는 되바다 수다 수메가서 깨달음바를 때네 안에 가와리온 거래서 제자다 당보 깨요도 되네 반에 즉 체르체르서 가와용 거래 안에 감숨 깨달음바자 나야리 거래서 나야다 즉 Guanaya, Tama, Naya, Mitawa, Mongoligores. Then the Gazam Gilia and the Jigiva Chiwa said Ligores, Chiwala Soba said that the Nigi Dunga Mongoya gave you idea that the new Dingy Gores, just like Yawa Lambanza, Yawa D, Yobaza Gawada now the Chiwa D Gores, just like the Yawa comes on the Yawa Malavana, the Mares or Tizana, Dunga Nisu Cubaris, Kiwi. 가서 가위 동아 요하게 예 띵차고래 나위 동아 요하게 띵차고래 지위 동아 요하게 띵디차고래 지상 가위게 개와랑바디다 디리에서지 동아 있는 교사 되네 삼다여다 때 개와랑바다 나야 돼 되네 용도와 가와디야 되네 치에 되네 용사 마게바네 치에요 말에 지상 개와망라바나 함선 개와망라바나 나야나 나와다 가와데 용 말에서지 다딩한 저기다 나와 세디 그시 레다 중간도 수보 즉 나야 수보 나야 나 소화 동안 영화에 되게 그시 먼저 되발마도 봐요 말에 술 봐요 이 말에 다 가와 세디 여러와다 치와 세디 용거와
The first point we looked at was specific to the visceral sensations of pain of physical birth. The second was that through taking birth, one has the seeds that produce, sustain, and increase the mental afflictions, thereby making this birth not suited or not ideal for engaging in virtue, because we don't have control over our body or mind, but our afflictions and karma control our body and mind. Now to the third point, which is that birth is the source of suffering, in that wherever one is born in the three realms, ongoing suffering will naturally befall you. So in terms of our situation as humans, we will, from the moment we are born, the process of aging begins. And this is something we have no control over. We cannot will it to stop. We will experience aging and the suffering associated with it. And illness too. Whilst no one wants to be ill, illness befalls us. It's not something we can will away, but it's something that befalls us because it comes with taking rebirth, taking birth in cyclic existence. And eventually, this process of ongoing decline through aging and illness leads to death. That this body that we valued so, eventually no longer can sustain our life, and we have to depart.
다제와 뉴몽이 니스 줄바 세다 간조 코어 레다 뉴몽이 개월 레바인자다 뉴몽이 니 차거 니스 줄바레세데 뉴몽이 니레스 뉴몽이 야기 띵지거레서 제 뉴몽이 니스 줄바 대가르스네 줄바니 코어의 개와나 차바다 나와다 몽벌주비 윤남라 네 두숨 계신 대례장 류심 랍동 마시위 동알네 대화라 미네데 and then nasone lusim tuaos.
Then the fourth. So here just changed two words. Birth is the source of the afflictions. Once you have been born into cyclic existence, the three poisons of attachment, anger, and confused ignorance arise towards objects. Again, because of that, the body and mind are thoroughly unpacified, suffer, and consequently do not abide in happiness. Thus, maybe up to there.
Ene person said that Numongi Nichi, Numongi Nichi Gores, near Dinchi Gores, and the Kiwati, Koala Kiwalimba, and the Kiwadigi, and Numongi Dinchi. Dear Jedan person, Kora Kiwana, and another Kora Kiwalimbanza. Jiggy Rangi Yin Chola Chapaki Chapa and you don't want mean and the Chapaki the young warriors, Chapaki warriors. Then a rang Jiggy Joame the Ran Jig just me Joame Cholia, Tamakia, the Kondrakia, young Chatakia, the young warriors. And then Mumba said that the nigger Yugi needs to Kaya Masheva Mumba, the nigger Maripa. The nigger 게다 용거레스 제자다 태좀 게다 록다 게다 다디나 마서 디네기 리몽부 용거로 와스 디셔차 뇽모바 게와 유남라 독숨 게신 뇽모바 게와 유남라 시도다 유세데 유 안랑게 인이 초라 차다게 차바게 안랑게 지게 되스 조면들 당화게야 유 되서 차다게 안디멘베션 달라야 노과 태좀 안에 록다 안에 꿀팁 안디네기 기고래 치사 되나 되샤시다 디모스um 기고래 기위니 시고래 치사다 개와 딜렘바자 레다 뇽모 코와레 개와 딜랑와인자 뇽모바디 기고래 치사다 디말랑베나 디스 뇽모디 기기 마레서 조샤고로 와다 치사다 뇽모 기위니 제다데 디니 시고래 사지.
So this fourth point is that birth is the source of the afflictions. So again, just through taking birth, we have the source for our ongoing suffering. And this comes about due to the afflictions. As we saw previously, that with birth, these afflictions aren't just merely present, but they arise and they can grow in strength and frequency. And this tends to happen towards particular objects. So objects here would be, for example, someone or something that we are attached to. So in relation to an object, so someone or something, it could be a view, an idea, an opinion, it could be a person, an object, a material object, attachment arises. Or if it's something that we dislike, again, the object can be a person that we dislike, it can be a view, an opinion, an item that we dislike, aversion arises, anger arises towards it. And so too, confused ignorance in terms of, for example, in a situation, not knowing what to do. What is the right course of action? Should I do this? Should I do that? What is better? Having this state of uncertainty, this due to our confused ignorance, not really knowing what we should do. And this is a natural process of having a birth that's bound in these suffering realms, that has come about due to karma and afflictions.
Dine jesa dine gi nyomo chadan mosum ki yodu andela dene lulia ande lu sem rabdo mashiwa lu semna kanga depende konro sane semna kanga ti chile yodu andi genji lulia kanga yugures jesa chawa ki de chawa shushimo gedo soso magi wa chadu dige ne lulia kanga le jesa da Lusem le rabdu mashiwa, sidda rabdu mashiwa is similar ganga yoba, lula ganga yoba jungore, shibe. She's not dungal ne, said the nigger dungal gain, dewala minibares, casanazo, dewa yungo mares, said.
Again, because of that, the body and mind are thoroughly unpacified, suffer, and consequently do not abide in happiness. So because of that, because of the risal of the afflictions, our happiness is destroyed. So with, for example, attachment, particularly when attachment is strong, we can think about nothing else. And our mental peace thereby is lost. Our clarity of mind is lost because of being so drawn to whatever it is that we are so attached to. So it's because of the afflictions that the body and mind are thoroughly unpacified, suffer, and consequently one does not abide in happiness.
And you won't be going out so near Lucim Dungo, that you mobile as a Tesha that Timusum Kihodu, your mobile rangular Kiva, Digi Ongi, and Gonda Sonia, down to Chicken Gabriel Conea, and Chicken Dronaya Sobada, and the Nigi and Jig Sim Makivala Sobada, Nasonia, and the Jig. Damara and the Nigiton Ganga Ted Lucim Dua, the Semna Ganga, Lula Ganga, Lucim Nigala Ganga Tigor, yes, I do see you do sometime, and
this point concludes with, thus body and mind are tormented in various ways by the mental afflictions. This we've come to recognize that through the rise of the afflictions, our mind is tormented, our peace is lost. So in this way, we suffer. Maybe even mental illness can come about in this way. Certainly physical suffering too comes through the afflictions in that they harm our body physically. So again, Thus, body and mind are tormented in various ways by the mental afflictions.
그래서 지수 bên 뇽방계도 고나서고네 류심 마기와디 간주 하고 거와다 제사다 가르리아 셈마기와 콘로나 차와게 되니게 온기 안소소이 셈마기와다 안지게 마기와 차야 데 셈마기비게 긴지는 고나야 되네 셈마기와 차도 칼라마자 되네 되네 수부교차 나자다 말아 야여바디 간주 하고 거래 아니 디나신 다른 간주 근데 가랴 시바나신 간주야 기내야 지 로리 두스네 둘둘두가 백고 책가 대행하자 하고 거래 나고요 바디야 나와디야 하고 거와다 가지나 지나에 다 시세데 소소소 시와데 하고 말때 현대 시와데 가지고 통과로와 통과로와 시와라서 뭐 통과래 지산데 강아디게 연구하고 하고 연구를 가지고 통과를 하고 거래 가지고 이내 디 강아디 용하디 가르치는 용바래 띵 가르리 띵 거세디 지산 기위기 레다 녀모의 깨월랑 바 텔레티네 용구요 바딩아서 하고 마다 이 한모치 만주기디 네 하고 거마 제가 디네자다 don다인보디 디수 차상 가르치 용것은 레다 녀모 원 코월의 깨월 렘바 인장 깨월 렘바 깨월 텔레티네 용고레스 제가 디 레다 녀모의 깨월 렘비 균레스 되네 레다 녀모의 깨월 렘바이나 다 가와 용고레 나와 용고레 치와 용고레 안 되샤 깨위 유를 되셔야다 콘르게다 아니 참 몸바게야 디원게 루심 마기바 심 마기바 심강아 되네 뉴르게 나자강아 되네 용그레스 제사들레는 뉴모 깨와 랑바 인자디 용 깨와 텔레티네 용 깨와 텔레도 용거를 제사디 레다 뉴모 깨와 렘바데데 깨와디 야고 말해서 오다
When one's mind is tormented by the afflictions, not only are we mentally unhappy, but we may well end up with a headache from being particularly upset, or even if whether it's anger or whether it's attachment that's strong. We can't enjoy time, for example, with our friends or delicious meals, or we struggle to sleep because our mind can't stop obsessing about what we either very attached to or upset about. So, having lived the number of years we each individually have, we know this, we recognize this. What's being said here doesn't need much explanation in that we know it is correct. We live with ongoing sporadic illness. We are ill, we heal, we have a period free of illness, and another illness befalls us. This just is the story of our lived experience. And the entire period of our life is a process of aging, especially as one reaches a certain point, then it is just a process of decline. And we know we are heading towards the culmination of this life, the finality of death and departing from this body. But whilst we know all this, we live with this, the causes of the situation don't really come to mind. And because we are immersed in this cycle of this life, we remain largely blind to the process of where we are. We do not think about it and just continue to follow our desires, follow our aversion, and in this way create further causes for suffering. So we need to come to recognize this process, to understand that it's our afflictions that cause our torment. It's our afflictions that have led us to being in this position in the first place, and it's our afflictions that make abiding in this situation so intolerable.
가와디게 가서 나와디게 하고 자다 나완딜레 타야게 교비야게 다 나와디 야분민도 나와딜레데 타고도 선배 삼다지네 만나게 된다래야 원고 나세디 말레 원고 제동아 저 최된제야라 소바다 아니 지금 제 데니게 아니 용고로와 아니 지금 나와도 뭐 소리야도 내가 나야딜레 타야게 탑람 맨주제야라 소바다 아주 지고로 그래서 나세디 여바다 하고 거로와 하고 와서 딜레 탈비 탑람 제하다 탑시디 땅고로 와다 근데 데니게 나신 당은 저기 semmajiba chayana denegi and semmajiba chay lulu kanga yuba de hakuwa de sa jeza deneza semmajiba de kanga di dele tayagi tablamlia and gabrielia and jige kasore semgamriba menjuji denje and ye jig lobsang jia and sem kanga de say tablam dimene jige ma and jig 시멘으로 세제 내셈 강아지 셈기 강아지라 타야 탑람자 되네게 탑시로지 뭔고 지고로 나오죠 제산 강아지 위바 하고 완자 딜레 타야기 탑시 지고로 받아 근데 겐고로 샤류 겐고로 지차도 수불다 직녀마로 메지 차도 다디 강아지 두고 말아 디미드 반자 주만 주젠 바 녀마로 메버스야나 아니 그지 너 딜레 직 배제 체단에 연수부디게 지금 동호디에 샤체 다이 바바체와야 니주스야데 서야데 저사데 그 유주가 간고 차르디 디 강아데 디 미드바체 데레 타야게 탑람 데네기 배제제 아주 지거로다 강아데 하고요 디 배제 지거로와 당한 저게 가르치고 말해서네 깨와 약부지 디네 강아메비 깨와 약부지라기 탑시된 아주 지거마다 디 마제바데 가르쳐서네 깨와 데라 강아 용어에 디게 깨와래 코와래 깨와 렘바 델레티네 용어 이거 바데 하고 고 말와 데 하고나 다 디야 보면 델레션다 제우지 탑람니 베지 지겨라 제가 디 마고 완자 만주게 깨와 델레 타야기 탑람 베지 지겨 말 디네 인자 다디 괜레스 제자다 만주게 당보 하고 해야 돼 가와다 나와다 치와다 디수 용어 차상 가르치 용어는 코와래 깨와 레다니모 코와래 깨와 렘바 델레티네 용고래 제가 레다니모 깨와 렘바 딥 타고 딜레 타와 지고 그래 세지 돈다지 송거라 이 하고에 딜레 타고도 선비게 삼로 깨게 돈다라 깨와 레다 깨와 렘바 델라 강아 디디요아데 델레티네 용와레스 델레티네 용와레스 다디 꿰인 바 통고 되네 두신의 심지도 어디 땡땡 델레티네 용도 선비게 녀버이도 다 델레테 타고도 다디 텔레 타시 타고도 선비 삼로디 리고로 바다 제사다 타바더니 선비게 얘기 된다라 디라트시고 그래
As we saw in the point above, birth is the source of suffering, the suffering of aging, illness, death, and so forth. So illness is something we have all experienced, and no one enjoys it, no one welcomes it. We all want to be free of it every time we experience it, and we never want to experience any form of illness again. Hence, to the best of our capacity, we try and look after our health, we watch what we eat, we try and exercise, and so forth. And when we are ill, when illness befalls us, we seek medical treatment because we do not want to suffer. We want to be free of suffering. So this is true on the physical level. It's also true on the mental level. When our mind is unhappy, we quickly look to distract ourselves, to move our mind somewhere else. And if that unhappiness is deep and abiding, we may well go and speak to a friend or a skilled therapist. Or one either under the guidance of a therapist take medication or to self-medicate with drugs, all so as not to suffer mentally. And when we recognize the physical signs of aging, we do all we can to hold on to the signs of physical youth. We do our best to manipulate the color and shape of our body to try and hold on to physical youth. But all of this, from medical treatment for the body, to distracting our mind and trying to make the body look young and vibrant, none of this gets down to the actual cause. This is where we need to place our attention, to recognize that everything that we experience that is unwanted comes about due to our contaminated karma and afflictions. All the other solutions that we apply, and many of them we need to continue to apply, we need to recognize that those solutions are temporary and are insufficient. If we do apply temporary solutions, which is fine, we need to also be putting effort into getting to the actual root cause, extinguishing our contaminated karma and afflictions. This is what needs to be abandoned. So therefore, the reflections here are to lead us to this point, where we recognize with such clarity that it's my afflictions that cause every problem that I ever have or ever will experience, whether it's on a physical level or a mental level. Therefore, it's my afflictions that I need to abandon. I need to guard against them at all times. And so the purpose, again, of meditating in these ways is to develop the strength of mind so that at all times, no matter what we are doing, we are aware of our mind and are determined not to allow the afflictions to dominate, not to allow them to direct us.
아니네 미디 신도 드라이브 chuyên 임비 동아 와스 동아 삼다다 미디 개와 미디에도 개와 미디 신도 드라이브 chuyên 임비 동아 와스데 어세 chuyên 동아 와스 다디고 삼다다 디가레스네 개와 탐지에 타 치월에 마데신 대야 미디라 대야 Dunga kona nyora jepi dena myaya semba os.
Now the fifth, birth is suffering because it is in the nature of unwanted or involuntary separation. It cannot be avoided that the end of all birth is death. This is undesirable and causes beings to experience only suffering.
다제와 미디신도 대비 춘이 인자 다 동하스 대야레스 동아레스 오다 장안 주게다 풍보디 아주 계세회 체리야 마주 시에 두면나야 고 라면바 시주야지 최고디 고로 춘이레스다 그래서 코와를 개와 렘바디자다 춘이레스 제산데 임베 데 동아레스 디 동아레 가르선다 개와 탐지게 탐마나 치와레스 치와레 마데바 그래서 지가서는 기세회제라 아니 시에마도 하여마 타마리 시도해야지 지나디 뭐 중요해야지 마대바 제자디 대야 제대 등한주기 되어요 말생 대야 미디어를 하시되 한주기 시에디 되어요 마 되고마다 되는 되나 세는 거 되나 섬거로 받아 미디어라 지자 대장 되는 인사 대자 동아 용어지고 제자 되는 인사 아들이야 셈이야 오다 나시사래 제장아 나기도 나시줘야 냥아 요르스비 되게 셈이야 강아 되지 동아 용거레스 제자 동아 용어레스 제자 용어 제바 대남 야야 셈 바오스 두신니스 되네 용도 되네 용도 셈베 되네게 바 삼로 시럽게 두수 제바제 두 제바진 야네야도 두신의 삼단 제바제 고레스 야야 셈 바오스 두신의 삼단 고레스 뭐
The birth is suffering because it is in the nature of unwanted separation. Being in the nature of unwanted separation means that it's something that will naturally follow. It's not someone's bad luck that death comes. It is something that naturally follows. It's not something that we have control over. We may have done for decades, tried to avoid death. But in the end, it will befall all of us. It cannot be avoided that the end of all birth is death. This is just the natural process. This is undesirable and causes beings to experience only suffering. In that, despite one's best efforts over decades, death will still befall us. And it will befall us not in a manner of our choosing. It will come about in dependence on our contaminated karma and afflictions. So these points, these 5 points, we need to think about again and again, repeatedly over a sustained period, using reasoning, using our intelligence.
da dunga sina kewa ka kyuen den yore ka den yore sa te da ma ju du sam dai re che sa du sam dai yo ko le kewa lem bi yo du kewa di kyuen den kewa lim ba ko le kewa lem ba na kyuen den do a se be da du chen sam da kyuen di ke sam da de kyuen di ke sam da du chen sam da den du chen da ma ju ge mi se di da da bo ma ju mi yu sung se da bo ko le kewa lem ba de kewa di pa 다 개월 렘바이나 대려 강아 가르가르가 용구도 가르가 가네가 용구도 셈베게다 계획 내가라 가요 계 살아 가요 용구도 안데 이제 계획 계완자 디 계월렘반에 셈리야 강아 강아의 용구도 디게 류라 강아 가르가르 용구도 두 진행한 적이 다 소소도 베셔라게 제바체세 셰르비도 제바체시 디위 가수다는 적이 초와 잡아녀야 강아요야 아니게 세외셔라 안 녀모바기에게 안차상 사보나 제바 류심레소 미롱레미도 제자 되네 자다 겨라 세셔 가와다 나와다 치와다 되네 동아 뭐 용구도와 되네 게 세외시 겨완자 겨와디 된래야 아니 제 되셔 폰로 나야 녀모바 먹고 기도와 딘기요데 늘리다 심리야 강아딘데 체기도와 사 되네게 다 동아디 권나서 타다만은 요아디제도와 제자다 되네게 제 세외실에 시에라 하면 님이 시에래 제자 시에데 자주에도 춘이리도와 제자 따고 때문에 시레면도와 선비 동아딘도 삼다인데 되네게 삼다다 두전 삼디네 동 땅에도 갑라 네 간섬데 디네 야네 야도 야네 삼다에도 아니 셈날 오다 내가 녀모몽기 깨월렘바디데 야보지 민도아 셈베게다 야대 야고 민도 괜찮냐 레샤 셈베게 삼로 지리도 거래 다 삼로 레어도 같이 그래서 델레데 타고 우도 셈베 삼로 리고래 don다라다 델레 타고 셈베 삼로 기고 거래 다서 예도 델레 타고 우도 셈베 삼로 기도 델레 타는 아니 가려서네 딜레 야가 탈비고 화 톱고 거래 탈비고 화 톱나 데네 강아데서 차상 요 말에 세투브레 제자리에서 탈바데 맞다 탑미노 세베게 타바동에 삼는 기고래 제자 디 강아디 기위 동화 삼다 동계와디 계와들 강아디네 여바레 셈베게 녀바지 녀도 디기 견전에 델레 탈되게 삼바 자되게 삼바게 델레 자되게 삼바게도 디네 타바동에 삼바기고래 다 돈다 타바동에 삼바기고래 타바동에 삼바게 돈다라 다디 강아디 다딘데 요래세데 맞아 라트고데 라트고 삼다데 신고를 지장한 적이디 강아 나와 치와데시 슈바나 강아 하고데 지단 깨와 델라디네 용고 임바디 세부징아 저기 심주코라 지고마 디 하고도 뭐 저 깨와디기 코레다뉴 코와 깨와 렘바디 균임바다 하고고 마다 니 하고에게 돈다라 맞아 디 삼다다네 시고라다 디레
The reason we need to think about these points again and again is because of our deep habituation to samsara. Until we look at the situation that we are in with analysis using our intelligence, we will not actually see the situation as anything wrong, but see it as perfectly normal and just accept that this is how things are without recognizing that there is a solution, that we can gain freedom from this. But to develop this attitude not of a mere recognition that freedom is possible, but where one's mind is set on attaining freedom, where all the other things that currently draw us and distract us, we see them in their true light, as distractions, as meaningless. So to give rise to a determined attitude that I must break free from this cycle of uncontrolled rebirth. I must break free from being controlled by my reflections and rather gain control over my mind and my body. To get to that point, one has to reflect on these points again and again. Reflect how birth is suffering because of the pain at the time of birth itself. Birth is suffering because a birth comes with the negative habitual tendencies. Birth is suffering because it is the source of our suffering, and birth is suffering because it is the source of our afflictions, and birth is suffering because from birth comes unwanted separation, or comes death. So these we need to reflect on again and again, recognizing that the position I am in is that I am without freedom. I do not have control. If my mood is up or down, I have maybe some influence, but I don't have control. And the fact that I don't experience mental peace, but more often torment of various degrees, this I need to bring to an end. So to become both fed up with our current situation by seeing it clearly, and to have the determined resolve to gain freedom, we need to reflect on these 5 points again and again.
먼저 델리아 니미되바 델라 탈두게 삼바기야 데네게 탈두게 삼바기는 델라 탈바동게 삼바기야 디디레 세상 두신네 니수 하고 바나 당한저 가브리엘이야 아다 둥아이 짱 삼단 셈라 강아 치우다디 야부민의 삼산의 여러와다 문이 여르데 이내다 문이 야고 삼다바네 둥아이 니수디 간에 연구요 봐 간에서 연구해서 니수도 하고 바이나 아니 그 사답제디 신기로와 예수도 하 먹어나 디세게 탑랑 고라신 말와데 강아세 타야 유리메래 제자데 예수가 하고 와지 되게 탑랑 신바네 되게 둥아데 수우서네 우이네수데 되 오트르지 오다 되네 강아래 되네 레도아 선비게 중 셰바 하고나 되네 차바게 얘기 숙충도 그래 차다게 숙충도 그래 제자데네 예수 하고에도 몽바세도 그래 몽바 디데지 예수도 하고 보면 디네 제바지 디네 신유시도 몽바디 마신바디 바세지네 예수도 하고요 몽바세야 차단기야 용로야 배는 저기 용으로 저기 밀 삼다베나 저직 옵티컬 다베나 안저 불 삼다네 지 부메페 직수부 약고 지금 밀리아 제오슈 나베나 람사 차바게기 요하게 첨보 숙심보여로 봐. 디나시 한 부딘의 수고 제보다 수고 지금 밀리아 인지고 나에게 나데 한 지금 무메서 람사 차바게 삼로 용거로 와. 제가 디인에서 하고는 낭야를 되는 난것들이 인내다 샤다 루보다 차다 차상에 세상 깨와 레다니모 코알레 깨와 렘바들 나야 요래 콜레 나야 요래 콜레 그 호차 요래 안에 지게 유르요래 딱와 템부요마 호방아 요르와 선비기 딘지 삼다이도 델리아 착바게 숙충으로 그러 제가 되네게 가지고 기위 동화 델레 제바제도 진짜 제바 삼야고자 하고 기위기 규현지 야고자 셈을 라트바 녀바 예소나 내가 유레 차단계기 용도야 안 몽버세야 안 디기 이제 델레야 안지 오다니 보면 델레다 타르고도 셈베게 델레야 타르내중게 내봐 디 타르게 삼바게 타르게 삼바게는 델레 타르젠다 가르도고서 타르바세도 토부도 셈베게 타바도에 삼바게야 다 타바도에 삼바게 바에는 델레한테 타바도에 있다나 다 토부도 삼바이다 디 토에도 날에 베주시기로 봐 베제제 된 람냠네 제림바 제자 람냠네 제바나 데네는 타바 토월이야 타냐는 요주아디 용고와 데네 자다디 뱀마시게다 둥하기 또 제바자 하고 와디 계시무 유차들로 당도
Normally, so what I'm encouraging you to reflect on here is something that normally we don't like to think about. We do not like to think about unpleasant things. In fact, whenever something unpleasant arises in the mind, we usually do our best to distract ourselves from it. But here it's important, therefore, to prepare yourself by being clear on your purpose. Because the outcome we want to get to is similar to when something in your life you come to recognize is unwanted, and when you recognize that it's unwanted from the depths of your heart, you'll do your very best to be separated from it, to gain freedom from it. And this is what we are looking for here. Then to be even more precise in the purpose of reflecting on these points again and again, is because what we're needing to challenge are, it's in one of the points here, that this birth is the source of the afflictions. And there, one of them is confusion or confused ignorance, which is an ignorance that is confused about how things are. And in the sense of thinking that things that will bring us, things that we are attached to, because they'll bring us happiness, when that is not how they are in reality. And having aversion towards other things, thinking they are the source of our suffering, when that is not the situation either. So to challenge this confused ignorance, we need to develop our understanding of how things are. For example, if one has reflected well on the faults of attachment, then when seeing a desirable person, a beautiful woman, a handsome man, when the thoughts of attachment arise in your mind, immediately, because of your prior training, you recognize those the attachment as not being reliable, not something worthy of following, because you know that this is not the route to happiness. If one seeks out a relationship with this person, interaction with this person, this is not the route to happiness. Because one has come to recognize that when attachment arises, it has distorted how what we are thinking about appears to our mind, and therefore does not exist in the way that it appears. That this source of happiness is actually not a source of happiness. And this belief that it is a source of happiness is deeply mistaken. This mind of attachment distorts reality, or conventional reality. So therefore, when one has understood this, when one sees, again, for example, a handsome man or a beautiful woman, and the mind of attachment naturally arises, immediately your wisdom, your intelligence, that's come about in dependence on your meditations, will naturally be applied. Vigilance and mindfulness will naturally apply one's intelligence, one's wisdom, and the attachment will dissipate. Here, what you recognize is that you are acting like a person who is striving for liberation. In that, you are cultivating the mind of wisdom to abandon the afflictions. Recognizing this development in yourself gives one confidence that I can do this. I need to, though, develop my wisdom ever further and apply it to all faulty minds that arise, whether attachment or aversion or any other. Develop this understanding and the skill to apply it broadly and deeply, so as to no longer be deceived by appearances, to no longer be deceived by the afflictions, but you rather let them go. And in this way, one is developing the skills required to cultivate the paths, the mental paths that lead to liberation.
아디네 자당 저기 타바세데 토바이나 아니 달비 고반 토도 되네 네 개발렘바 타바 톱네 되네 요모 빠스네 개발렘비기 개발렘데 다 주게 차로 주게로와 아니 다 나게 공제 주게서 주게 생각해요 말에 주게 차고래 제가 탈바 토 되네 아니 디 토인도 탈비 류렘바디 다 몰라난 개와 바실이 된 주도 말에 개와 류지 몰람 다 개와 쇼서 몰람 저거로 돼 몰람 잡되네 개와 주디 녀모 빵비기 개와 바실이 된 주바 차고래 제가 다그 유들라 디 풍보디 유디 다 몰람나 개와 바실이 돼 개와 짱짱이 된 주도 차려로 봐 개와 짱짱이 차반자다 기회 되고 대화마다 동안이야 말봐 제가 디네자 디 풍보디 개와 렘비기 되니기 개와 쟁이 되니기 개와 렘비 된 풍보텔라 아니 나와요 말에 나와서야 되는 거 말에 치와서야 되는 거 말에 되니기 나와다 치와다 나 가와 가위 동아서 가와데 다 직당 뭐야 니뭐 바니뭐 차져야 가위 동아요 말 제가 가와다 나와다 치비 강아지 매발 류리티네 매발에 제자도 류려야 되네 매발에 제자 샘라야 다 되셔 공동하자 탈바토서 되셔 공동하게 기고 말어 디마께 봐서 샘라야 강하면에 리심니가 강하면에 리심니바 강하면에 다 띵이진 리심니가 레수로 와서 개외처와 냠란 간의 제바이나야 제투야게 된 차고래 제자다 디된 제바 전지레스 제자 니 토바이나 저기 대딩이 대화세 토발 대화네 대화마도 아니 동안여에 균에 매가자거래 지자 디풍보된 아주 개월내한테 고고래스 디토고고래스 디토발라 지자 탈바동에 삼바께지 안디 토비 규디 바고 싸고래스데 람내공고래스데 제마 람내공고래 람젠 템바시나데 람딘 냠네 제고래스 리고로 와지자 디마모 반데 디시에 제자디 디니 풍보 토고 디토바지 탑람네 가르슨 람냠네 진 토고고 지자 람냠네 제고래스 제자다 냠냠 제고래스 다당한도 풍보 강어 여바데 가르슨 고유 뇨모 바데 레다 뇨모 바데 제고래스 지자 뇨모 베게 제고들라 아니 제 동아마도 강아지요 요마데 강아마도 야고 디와요 말아 제가 디리스 제가 당한 쪽에다 되니게 몰라나 개와서 바실을 두디게 풍부 두고 탈바세 토요데 디두부레 제가 탈바 토고 그래서 얘네 탈바 토요게 돈달라 람냠네 제고래서 대다 돈다 인보디 두신디고 제가 돈다 디소한테 람냠네 제고자 디 이제 발랑하는 중에서 하모고 아주 제두고 맞아서디 하고에 돈달라 디 송고를 동아요 삼단하디
When one achieves one's goal of liberation from suffering, liberation from cyclic existence, these 5 points relating to birth will no longer apply when birth is taken. So when one has attains liberation, one takes rebirth again, but rebirth is taken not under the power or the control of contaminated karma and afflictions, because one is liberated from contaminated karma and afflictions. Rather, rebirth is taken due to virtuous karma, so not contaminated karma, but uncontaminated virtuous karma and prayer. Therefore, when one takes rebirth as a liberated being, it's under the power of one's prayers and virtuous uncontaminated karma. With this new body, and this mind that is liberated, one will not experience physical sufferings, such as the suffering of birth, which was the first point, the later sufferings of aging, sickness, and death, or uncontrolled death. Those sufferings will never be experienced, so that's in the third point. And one is also freed from the negative habitual tendencies, because one is liberated. One will these negative habitual tendencies means one has the seeds that produce, sustain, increase mental afflictions. One is liberated from that. One will never, therefore, experience the mental unhappiness of merely the arisal of affliction, because one is liberated from that. And likewise, so this is then all 4 points, the first 4 points that one is freed of, and death will not be uncontrolled, and it will not come with suffering. So in this way, when one achieves liberation, all 5 of these points of suffering, the suffering of birth, one is liberated from. So when it's taught in the Four Noble Truths that the first truth, the truth of suffering, is to be known, this means both suffering needs to be known, so in detail, like is being presented, so one understands what suffering is, but one also knows what it's like to be freed of suffering. And that means to be freed of of being freed of being under the control of contaminated karma and afflictions, like we currently are, to be liberated from that. And this means we'll be free of suffering, because the reason we suffer now is we have taken rebirth under the control of contaminated karma and afflictions, and these afflictions continue to deceive us, continue to dominate us, so push us in unwanted directions. So all of this needs to be known. And the deeper we know this, the more transformative this knowing of suffering is, the deeper our determination for freedom will be.
당한도 도시네 제바지 니스 모유 니스 하고 해야 돼 매마서 예침보 니하고 왜나 판도 침보유 되게 아니지 도시 대세야리야 강한세야리야 탑람 안에 야고 신야게 잡을 침보유 반자 되네게다 아주 동화 깨와네 동화 된데 요래서 제바지 동화 못 쳐야 돼 다딩어 맞추비 견자 딩어 쳐고 신고고 봐 제사상이 좀 된데기 대시의 총을 담보선에 동화를 쉐바차 세 송을 봐지도 동화 다 하고 지그래서 제가 동화하고 와지 가르가르도 되니스도 무인이서 하고 그래서 뒷마신 봐있는데 되니스 세계 탑람 세계 말에 데 탑람 맞는 세툭 말에 강할리 그디는 저 투야요 말에서 제가 뒤 하고 와지 무인이서 하고 해도 다 될래야 셔야게 탑람 제용 그래. 탑람 제도 탑람 얘기래서. 탑람 제네 탑람 얘네 탑람도 비지 땅에 될래 탈도 그래. 또 그래. 제가 동아 시야 봐자. 세대. 다들 송고야 베기 거바 김전 배 김전 첨부로 와다 되네만 디던다데다 람림 날마 도시도 송용으로 다 시야 봐제 다디 다 동아 시야 봐제 송아 다 동아 시야 봐제나 간에 시야 봐제 고리 시야 봐 간에 시야 고리 시디 제자 담보 풍 끼어와들 미비게다 제바 제야도 가라 담보 미유리 봐제 때 미유 제치도 삼다 안 될래야 시야럽게 제바 제야래 세디 당은 저기 제외 동아대다 다 기회 동아 삼내 다나 제바 제다데 더 두수 시제 되네 삼다를 기회 동아 개와네 기회 동아들 내다 녀몽 개와데 개와 동아 가르가 강아 가르가 여바디 두시네 셈나 쳐바제 디안에 양도 셈 땅에도 셈량 개바 템부시니 개바 템부니도 어다 텔레 타고도 셈베게 탈되게 삼바게 디르와다 다 디레
I cannot overemphasize enough the importance of engaging in this meditation, the meditation on the suffering of birth and the other 7 here, to meditating on true sufferings in general. The Buddha was very emphatic about the need to come to know true sufferings. And I've explained now what needs to be known, suffering in detail, the origins of that suffering, and that we do not have to suffer, and how we can gain freedom from suffering. And this is so important because we are so habituated to samsara that we take this as normal. But it's this delusion, that this deluded state that we consider normal is our prison of samsara. So to recognize that something that we have always taken to be true, even though it's false, to recognize that everything that we have had such certainty about is actually wrong, takes deep, deep reflection, ongoing over a sustained period, to shake us free from all these illusions. And an imperative part of our foundation is the meditation on true sufferings, coming to know what is presented here and will be continued in detail over the coming pages, to really come to recognize how pervasive suffering is in our own lived experience, and in particular, and as we come to recognize how pervasive suffering is, our repulsion or renunciation for suffering will grow. And with that will come a clearer identification from our own lived experience of the role the afflictions play, seeing how the afflictions arise, how they distort how we perceive reality, and lead us to engage in actions that do not lead to a desired outcome. Coming rise to recognize that our true enemy are these afflictions, and these are what I need to be on guard against and strive to abandon. So to get to that point takes ongoing reflection, so that we can develop the determined attitude that leads us to let go of what distracts us, and to apply ourselves to coming to watch our mind, know our mind, and abandon these afflictions.
Denigi Gawa Dubne, Denea, Dewachen, Yakiwi, Molam Gawa Shores, Molam Yana, to tap, do Shevena, Denigi, the Chike, Chevena, Denigi, Molam da, that Sujum Sung, Jimbatan, Sevokum, Zundri Zumbi, Gawata, the Molam Dewachen and Gawa Shores, Molam Gawa Melia, and it so active, Zeshi, Devache, Denigi, and the Dewachen Gawashi, Molam Deptisidan, Molana Gavi Bashi, Gavale Dene, Gavachima, Tarbamato by Ne, Dewachen give to a younger is Dewachen, the Tarbamato Toyo, Marino Panyo Martine, Dewachen gave a younger is Molam da Gavada, Molam Gava Bashi, that Dewachen gave led on Yomo or Gigo Mother, Molam Gavachanja, Sada. Dewache, Gawa did, Sabi did in the Dewachne give you Molam Japdu, send it to that. Digi Molam na Gawa gave you Topi, Gawachima, Dewachela Gawa Gurias. 데 대화전에 깨와 있나 얘네야 대화증이 된데라 깨와데 코 자좀바 말에데 이내야 된들리다 아 저게 나위 동아디게 매사래 되네 이제 녀몽바데 방요 말에데 이내야 되네게 나위 동아다 배직 차랑 공조다 아니 지게 한 되네게 몽바 말이바 여발마다 공조 되게 매사래 공조 되게 매래 되네 인자다 될이야 아니 지게 강아 몽지 매와 자루고래 제가 되네자 될이야 당아주 되벌 깨와네 가르소나 까블이야 류레네 나제 강아 칼라마르비 강아 둘로마르비 강아 니니쇼로와다 제가 되어진에 깨와이나 아니 되니게 칼라마라와다 둘로마라와다 아니 되니게 강아 요마라 나위 강아 요마레 제가 강아 몽고시 도신 세요세요무리스 제가 되네자다 되니게 다지 동아지하고 뭐쳐야고 신 되니게다 냠는지 타르바이고가 토마토바이나 누가 있으니 주든비 거서 미가 주송비 수름하고 송 되니 진배 냠는지 수름 냠에 저세바 공면도 개발을 준비 좀 되니 대화전에 기회가 말람접 되니 개화바면야 대화치 말람접 되니 개화 쇼스 말람 대화이나 될때는데 대화전에 개화 용고래 대화전에 개화이나 되니 안에 된 대화증에 된래야 아니 제 강한 배지 될래야 최장야마도 디비 자와지 해 말이다 디비 그디나 최장야 지긴서라 최기 자와 장야지 얘네 난 타바 탐지기 벽고 토야래 사지고 토래야 요거 토도야 용무에서라 아 되는지 요스 송도와 아무도 되어진스는 걸로 예 여어밤에 얘네 되다 여어밤에
in Sanskrit Deva chant is it Tsongkhapa
Shanti
in Sanskrit
Shanti place Shanti place
great place.
What is it in Sanskrit?
Remember? Tsongkhapa
Amebhatagi dirwa.
Okay.
Amatabagi dirwa.
Gosan.
Amataba place.
Place.
Amataba place.
So by coming to understand suffering well in the way that I've presented thus far and will continue in the coming weeks, leads to a strong wish to gain freedom from suffering, and therefore a determination to not accumulate the causes that will lead to suffering. This greatly aids our practice of ethical restraint, restraining our body and our speech and our mind from non-virtue. Moreover, wanting to accumulate virtue so as to gain freedom from suffering, our practices of generosity will be greatly enhanced, in particular, not just in terms of frequency and strength, but also in the purity with which we'll engage in generosity, free of self-interest and so forth. As well as our reflecting on suffering will also greatly aid our practice of patience, because through the reflection on suffering, one comes to know oneself very well, and thereby comes to understand others. And thereby easily our mind stays undisturbed in the face of adversity. And because of these practices, ethics, generosity, and patience, being engaged in and being successful, we will be enthusiastic about our spiritual progress, and we'll persevere with enthusiasm in our spiritual journey. Then these four practices of ethics, generosity, or generosity, ethics, patience, and enthusiastic perseverance, combining them with prayer to Amitabha, leads to the accumulation of causes that may well result in a rebirth in Amitabha's Pure Land of Sukhavati. And being reborn there, even as an ordinary being, so not being an arhat, one's afflictions will be minor. For example, one won't experience anger, attachment will be weak. One will still have confused ignorance because one is needing to cultivate the Dharma within. But one will also not experience physical hardships such as illness. Moreover, there are no material difficulties in Pure Land of Tsongkhapa. It's not like now where we have to work to earn a living, to buy food and have a comfortable home and so forth. All material needs are taken care of. And once born in Tsongkhapa, one only engages in the Dharma, and therefore no non-virtue is accumulated. Thereby one is quickly accumulating the causes for liberation and enlightenment. So this whole sequence of events that can result in rebirth in Tsongkhapa comes from reflecting well on true sufferings. Because part of the outcomes of reflecting well on true suffering is the determination to abandon the causes and rather be ethical, generous, patient, and do so with enthusiasm.
지상한지 점물링이야 dem바상 요즘인데 페이지네다 최대 델링대가 저기 점물링들라다 디루와 신함데 dem바샤게 투비 페이지네 최대인데 싫어. 대대화증의 신함들이야 여와밤에 페이지는 최대인데 dem바샤 유튜브 나시 안도 최선의 제지 여와밤에 자되어. 지난데 여와밤에 내세대 배마세 사실 장마 내지 견탐제단 자와 안지게 지신의 매도 인지고 예바 아니 매도되게 봐야지 인바 차도되네 마 사박에 계시는 파수 차상 가와 대변의 장로서 세계다 아니 지게 먼저 추진 제마제세 배지 야고요 봐 근데 잘라로 소소 도로를 가르고에네 소소 거바 나신 렌초쇼 쾌랑이 니잘라 쾌잘라지 요마레서 그러다 제가 되게 요레스 제가 사지 야고 장마 지키 쉬우요레서 제가 되어진게 다 신감괴네 다지디니게 용거래 요래 송거래 그래서 당은 좀 제가 근데 자기네 말이 좀 지시요래 제가 좀 기시시요래 이마 세제 기시고 지게 술래시네 된 제가 당은 좀 거기 아주 네마 거기 되니까 그래야 배지 사지도 고려도 예고 칼라사야도 예 공부 안지게 강아 둘로디에 강아 배지 교부 강아 유디가 내려로 와다 고려되게 되니까 람가디게 배 강아 파소도디게다 모다디게다 야심배가 공부하자도가 강아 막고요 와다 나 그런 기시 따지네 지수 지게를 배 지게배 근데 지게를 해도면 지게 사치되게 배 고유되게 장마 야고 안에 지게 튕기는게 야고에 쉬어로 와다 되는 인산 그런 게 지연 소리해진데는 마 아니 그런 게 기행들이야 이시다 말했어 자 이게 단데 지다 죄자상다 가려면 맨날 직다로 왔네서 가려는 근데 타마들이야 아니 이게 땅사지 가원 땅에서는 대화진에 땅와 인생 뒤열해서 제가 두세 좀 셔요.
When Buddha appeared in our world, he appeared from his Pure Land and took birth in our world for our benefit. So the Pure Land that I've been describing here is that of Amitabha. And the Pure Lands aren't particularly different from each other, but through prayers and accumulation of causes, like I've just explained, of ethics, generosity, patience, and enthusiastic perseverance, one creates the causes to be born in Tsongkhapa. And once born there, the environment is magnificent. It's beautiful, it's clean, it's pleasant, and there are no environmental problems like we have in our world. There's no climate change, there are no problems in terms of the environment. And also, all one's material needs are easily attained. One just has the thought and one attains it. Therefore, there is no ownership of material possessions there at all. There's none of, oh, this is mine, it's not yours. Such thoughts don't even exist there. So therefore, it's an ideal place to engage in Dharma practice. So now I'll tell a story about a Geshe quite some years ago from Sedache, who, upon his completing his studies, he went abroad, and he was one of the first to travel abroad, or before many of us knew anything about life outside either our home country or India. And he sent a letter back to his teacher, and of course, I have no idea what is in the letter, but he did at the end describe the environment, and he described it as being so beautiful. The environment was beautiful, and it was clean, and the roads were wide, and everything was peaceful and quiet. And then he signed the letter as in the address as being from Tsongkhapa.
내 동학이 내다다 하고는 될래야 탈되게 삼바 타바등에 삼바 제제 띵이 되와 좀 토에 삼다 비주다 예대 말에 나디네게 좀 삼더 마더베네 다 주는 야보송 진바다 서버 검준의 삼 되네 대화전에 얘기 몰람 잡지 강아지를 타야게 탑라제 예대 말에 제가 탑라 나서 예베레 제가 디네게 자다 아주 고유 동학이 내수다 하고 바이나 될래 타야게 탑람 제야 예바지 하 먹어 와 있나 Dini machine by na, Dele Tabia Tabla Zigo, Magidina, that Dejan, Tabaja, Dugo, Bangaz, Gidina, Subotella, Tabaja, the Manjay, Hoyada, the Nigi, Luziz, Hoya to the Jada, the Nigi Pa, Dicanya, Jade Mato, Dile Dorje Tarjin, Shanda Yagaji, Zeg Tablamdi, Nanzu some Tatugo Maradi, Matuba de Garson, Muini Sugi. 동아디 모인이 수데 마싱 봐 가와 가네스 용고 봐다 가와를 용고 봐 가네스 요디 모인이 수데 마싱 비기기 디차고로 와 제가 되네 자다 동아기 네수데 신고야 돼 동아 공고를 해야 돼 다 예시 무슨 거야 돼 나디래 당서 야네야도 가서 해야 돼 이래다
So to attain rebirth in an environment such as this, whereby one has all that one needs to engage wholeheartedly in the Dharma. One needs to create those causes, the causes of ethics, generosity, patience, enthusiastic perseverance, and prayers. And then one can be reborn there without being a foe destroyer, but will have all the conditions required to become a foe destroyer. But merely having an aspiration for things to be better will not lead to the attainment of a great result such as that. One needs to accumulate powerful causes, and powerful causes require a powerful and sustained motivation. Such a motivation comes through reflections on what has been presented here. So I encourage you, in our time apart, to engage in these meditations repeatedly, because what we are trying to do is radically transform our way of thinking. To all the things that we desire and get excited about, drawn towards or repulsed from, to come to see them with more clarity. To recognize, to lift these veils of ignorance and recognize that what draws us and what repels us, none of this has much importance. What is important is that I watch my mind and I deal with the afflictions. What's the problem is being drawn is the attachment. Being repulsed is the aversion. These I need to gain freedom from. It's these that keep me bound in suffering. In this way, by reflecting here, reflecting in the way described here, we will come to understand our situation much better. And in this way, we will transform ourselves from being deeply deluded or confused to being someone wise, someone seeing things as they actually are.
그래서 되니기 단나라 도시내가 저게 동하곰 시티 다대시 슈바나지가 또 치는 심relö지 대장아 저게 되네 안 소식 나변에 깨와셔야지 내가 저게 간스까지 용거리 깨와들 간에 용거리 집에 삼다에도 깨와들 봐 삼다 대 깨와렘바 다 깨와렘바 삼도다 강아 간에 용거리 집에 다 깨위 가서 강아 가르가 열어서 당어도 삼 셰비게 리바 김전 삼다 디진의 디용어 되는지는 고강아 되는 지어봐서 강아 되는 용구로 봐. 근데 배네 아주 부고로 기어도 갈 남사 아주기 배네 돌로로지 티샤바나 가래고 동아 가령고를 남나 다 가서는 곧 아미로가 나는 배 지게 전부에다 디치로기 코들라 지 레로다 지 제베네 코로 주부시오전 디 이제 동아 용고라서 안 되네게 아주 김전 삼다 자 셰르비 제세데 용어 용비 김전 가래 용탕 간에서 용고래 가리끼인지는 용고래서 니 삼다 제바셔야 되다 Dene ki cheba chi do odi jene dene chin dunga yung kore, di jene dene chi dunga yung kore, tie sewe chile dunga dene yung kore, karasan di dene yung kore, ga yung kore, gyua rugu da, dene rugu da, tu chen chin, di ngoye ni su di ha koyo do, di dunga yung o di ha ko kore. Dan digi de yi che de tarpa dungi se de yuan yin ba che. Dene yakbo shin bay na, da me ba to tongma yin to wale, sharai pen se rawa. Karasan ne, dang han ju karasan ne, chik dene ki nisu ha ko way na, 저기 직자라이나 가나데 소수게 미통도 배 닝조 배 뿌이다고시오 직난로 나요도 남산 차고 예냐요 되네 삼도 되네 기니서 하고 어디 나와 나신지 요마다도 돌라디 되네 요래 강아 되네 디디디 요 균디디 요래서 삼도 나와 나신 강 나요도 갑라 아니 배 뿌이다고 닝조 야고시오 균균에 매만난 거데 나를 되는 요 말이야 비슷해 나와 나시 요 말이야 삼다이도 되네 고 내가 소리 맞아 나와다 마주버 또야려 신다 예줘야 돼 차기도 와现在 되네在 동에 있어 해야 돼 판도 먹고도 이해야 되게 차기도 와
So a key point that one wants to get to in these meditations can liken to if you're out in the shops and you see something that looks fantastic and you're really excited about it and you see the price and think, I can't believe it, it's so affordable. But you buy it, you get it home and it breaks because it's just a knockoff. Next time, when you go to the shops, you'll be a lot more aware and you'll see this fabulous shiny thing and you'll know, I've made that mistake again. Before, I won't make it again. This is what we want to get to. Because right now, we go through life and we are drawn to all these shiny, wonderful things, or we're repulsed by things that we dislike. And all this is a confused mind placing value on things which they just do not have. Hence, from an exaggeration of great benefits to things, we are drawn to it. From the exaggeration of faults, we are repulsed by it. We are deeply deluded. So what we want to get to through these reflections is looking with reasoning at what we have thus far come to look as joyous birth of a new life. How wonderful. I hope next life I have a great rebirth again like this life. These kinds of thoughts. To recognize that anything that comes about due to contaminated karma and the afflictions is in the nature of suffering. And so one reflects on these 5 points, going through them again and again, and through this process of repetition, you'll think of new ways to analyze. For example, when you recall a birth that you've witnessed, you'll remember that the newborn infant quickly had to be wrapped because now suddenly it's cold, its skin is exposed. And you recognize that the sensitive skin, it can't really protect itself. It needs external help. So what looks so wondrous and joyous, actually that's an exaggeration. So here we're just trying to come to look at the situation with reality. And to the extent you give rise to this repulsion, this wish for freedom from this situation, so first is the rejection, then comes the wish for freedom. Then also one will naturally want others to be freed from this situation too. So in this way, by going through these meditations, you're developing your wisdom, your intelligence. You're giving rise to a wish to turn away from samsara, to let go of what has no value and embrace what does, and strive for liberation. And you give rise to the wish, may others do so too. May others also gain freedom from these veils of delusion and see the world as it is. See reality, conventional reality. See the world as it is. And let go of these delusions and gain freedom from their afflictions. So these are some of the key points that we strive to get to in these meditations. So I encourage you to engage in these every day.
ne emba mea chi gogo ma da ne gab de ga de kambe so so kambe na de ne do sin de jeba chi chu re de me be do sin de ya 아직 도스에는 참여로서 되니기 안쪽에 지능가 다서 봐줘지네 봐 되신도 제대제 도스미래 통화도 어디 수서서야 삼다 어디서 되는데 이거로 와서 되게 삼다면은 인디래 인디메비도 신의 삼다면은 하나 다도시 삼다 되니게 안지게 미첨보 깨라 첨보 안지게 배나가 듬비다 이문 초사로 시티 되니게 기시 고야다 통화르시나 아도 삼다나 어다디 미 나야라다 배지 암절고 지직 나야디 야고 쉬는 거데 있는 don달라 뉴이들이 약간 아딘데 요래다 간술 요바네 콘술에 찍바래 레다님 뭐 옹기 껴인자 차상에 찍바래 선비게 삼다요도 아니 될야 차상 잡아게다 이문제 되게 명루고라 당은 좀 망고지다 이문제다 배하고 그래서 이문제들을 잡아게 지금 거로 와다 제가 되네 삼다마다 되듯이 안다도是介绍拿的话就是白看吧这个修这通了的我说好比方说啊在现在的白有修有的变就要我刚刚有一个什么人给说的就是心就的两个东啊三大这个三大的这个跑怕的了有些三大呢我到可能来的有的搞绿的呀呢有的拿着有的有的跟我刚刚的有的把的되네자 안델이야 안데 지게 삼는 나라 차당 모습 숙시모 예버래 강아 여래 대자다 대비기 되 마주베 강아 다 대바 여바디게 파잘 메와 차서 선비 강아 다 강아 봐도 메바 용어래 대 고당 가지가 소스 삼다한데 나야 되네선데 강아 되 추어데 제가 고당 가지 나 강아 추서 선비 삼로도 용투사라와 제가 되네기 동화 삼다에디 딩아 주기데 동화기 두 제바지 삼다에디 망보지 판도에 바쳐고래.
And in my encouragement for you, to you, to do these meditations repeatedly, I want to say that I don't know your home environments, but they are fine. They are almost certainly fine for this meditation. Do not think, oh, I need to wait until I'm somewhere quiet, living in solitude. Then I'll be able to meditate on these topics. This really is not the case. So what we covered last night and this morning about the kinds of mind one needs to cultivate in order to, how to do the meditation. So we saw there, one needs a similitude of calm abiding and meditative insight. So this is something that in your homes you can do, because what are you being asked to do in meditation is to think about a topic, just one topic, and to think about it with your intelligence, to analyze it, to investigate it from various points of view. And this is something that you do every day, all day. You think about perhaps something that you like, or something that you dislike, a problem, or something that you're pleased about, and you're thinking about it in various ways. This is what the meditation is we are trying to do. One only needs to be somewhere isolated and very quiet when you're trying to develop actual calm abiding. But until then, one's home environment is suitable. Because in the same way that you can think in your home environment about whatever topic, you can think about this topic. So I encourage you to make the time to do so. And a further key point on meditation. We talk about meditation as in sit quietly, usually in the morning. You think maybe on a cushion or a chair and you're thinking about the text. This is important to do and needs to be done every day and needs to be done regularly. But not leave it at that. Don't get up from the cushion and now you've done it, it's ticked off and you can get on with your day. You need to try and be aware of what you've been meditating on as you go about your daily activities. In particular, aware of your own mind in terms of are the afflictions arising, and then deal with them. So when you see something, you're going for a walk and you see a neighbor's home and it's a beautiful home and attachment arises and you think how wonderful it would be to have such a home. Recognize that attachment and immediately seeing attachment for what it is, a mind that exaggerates good qualities, think more clearly, lift that veil of confused ignorance and think more clearly. Actually, if I had this house, I would have the problem perhaps of pride, the problem of needing to take care of it so that it never aged and so forth. And I'd need to work longer and harder and save even more. So look at it with clearer eyes and allow in that way the attachment to dissipate, reduce the attachment. And so too with aversion. If you meditate in this way, not just on the cushion, but you take what you've learned on the cushion and apply it throughout your day by primarily being aware of your mental process and guarding against the afflictions, so much benefit will come. This is where change will come about rapidly, when meditation gets integrated into your daily life. And this is how one takes the Dharma and integrates it in your daily life. And then as one cultivates a wish to be ethical, to be generous, to be patient, then these are minds too that one will apply in daily life by watching your mind. So there are so many benefits that come from meditating in the ways presented here and doing it so repeatedly over a sustained period and taking it into your daily life as well. Then thank you. Then we can conclude therefore this weekend. Thank you.